It's kind of damp Thursday morning. The Art Lewis Show from now till about 11:30 this morning. Hour number 2, we will talk to Dylan Rattel, director of the upcoming Dial M for Murder production at the Bay City Players. At 11 o'clock this morning, Midland Roofing will be on focus. But for this hour, a part of it anyway, we are going to talk about the gubernatorial race and some other issues around the state of Michigan, because with us this morning is the Senate Republican leader and also candidate for governor, and he is Senator Eric Nesbitt. Senator, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Art. Thanks for having me on, and it's just Eric. That's okay.
All right, Eric. I have to start. You are the Republican leader in the Senate, but the Senate is one short. And we who live under that shortage have no representation in the Senate. And I speak, of course, of the 35th District. Do you see any movement on fixing that?
I sure hope so, because the people in Saginaw, in Bay, and Midland deserve to have representation is in Lansing. I mean, it's tough to make it in Michigan right now. And as we know that as we discuss important issues on lowering the cost of living, of creating better jobs and better paying jobs, investing in our roads and bridges, that we want everybody to be able to make it in Michigan. And right now, instead of talking about the important issues at hand, like how poorly our kids are doing in school or how bad our infrastructure is, that we're having a debate whether or not the people in the Great Lakes Bay Area have representation in Lansing. And what we've seen from Governor Whitmer is we celebrate 250 years of American independence next year, is she seems to be bringing back taxation without representation for the people of the 35th Senate District. And it's not just Republicans and independents saying it, but I'm hearing Democrats saying that now up in Saginaw and Bay and Midland.
Well, her lieutenant governor and her attorney general both called on her to fill the position.
Well, with the governor jetting out to Japan for a few weeks, Garland Gilchrist, as the lieutenant governor, will have the power of the governorship during that time, as she's out of state. And why doesn't he call a special election while she's gone?
Well, maybe he will.
It needs. Yeah, I mean, he said it needs to be called, and he has the power to do it. While Whitmer jets off to Japan, and I can't tell if he's scared to go against the governor or if she just is going to take his spine with him to Japan.
Yeah, and the other problem I see with it is most of the conversation is coming out of the 35th District. We who live here are all concerned about it. I suspect if I traveled around the state, nobody else would care. And I wonder if that's also part of the problem. But I suspect the reason she hasn't called it is she's afraid she'd lose it, because this area's turned purple.
I'm afraid, you're right, Art, I'm afraid it's all about politics. It's all about pure partisan politics. Right now, there's 19 Democrats in the state Senate, 18 Republicans in the state Senate. And if Republicans win the seat, which I believe we will, it'll be 19-19. But at the end of the day, it's really about giving a voice to hardworking Michiganders, the 270,000 people that live in that district. But we're starting to get some national media on this. You saw this on One American News Network a few weeks ago. I talked about it, national news media. Wall Street Journal had an editorial. Their editorial board wrote an editorial this week on it, calling for a special election in 35th. And so, especially the hypocrisy we've seen with some of the redistricting that's going on in other states, that I just find it very interesting how our Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, spends so much time telling us how sacred the right to vote is, but she's refusing to call out her friend Governor Whitmer for denying the 35th District a free and fair election. Let's get it done. Let's make it happen.
All right, let's move on to some other things, most notably the budget. We're in the throes of trying to come up with one. Any closer now that the Republicans in the House have put forth the budget? How close are we to sitting down and actually hammering out an agreement?
Well, if we're gonna have families and small business owners and farmers and our kids make it in Michigan and continue to invest in Michigan, that hardworking families are struggling to even make it in Michigan. The Democrats' budget has spent over $500 million on 4,300 phantom jobs in our government. The House budget cuts that out, and so that's good to see. We appropriated the money. The money got spent, but the jobs were never filled. I think issues like that, it's a disgrace. When 3 out of 4 fourth graders aren't able to read at grade level, we have to get some accountability and transparency back in our schools to make sure that our kids can make it here in Michigan. So there's big issues that are out there. When career and technical education training isn't happening for our juniors and seniors and work co-op so that folks can make it in Michigan, that our kids can have good paying jobs when they graduate from high school or trade schools or college, that there's some big issues to accomplish. I think the biggest thing is we go around. I mean, heck, I haven't replaced my ripped up windshield from all these holes and spots that I've got from the roads, because I know they're just going to get cracked again, that we need to fix our damn roads finally. And that's up to where the House has come up with a bipartisan way to fix our roads here in Michigan. That was part of the budget. And unfortunately, the Senate Democrats haven't come up with a plan. And so I get back is if we're going to, if families and hardworking folks are going to make it in Michigan, we got to fix these roads. We got to fix our local roads, especially as we see you get back home and the average family spends upwards of $700-800 a year on their car because our roads aren't fixed. And fortunately, we see a bipartisan plan that was passed that'll actually fix our roads. Let's get that passed. Let's get it done. Let's get it so that hardworking families can make it in Michigan again.
How far away are we from the Senate and the House sitting down and doing it?
There's some sitting down. I mean, this is a part of the process without going into all the inertia. I think most people just want to get it done, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just about getting it done. It's about fixing some of the problems here in the state. Fixing our roads, fixing our education system, making sure that every one of our state workers that aren't showing up to the office today show up to the office.
Yeah.
I mean, one out of five workers are even showing up to the office right now.
Yeah.
State workers.
All right, Eric, hang on. I got to take a break, and we'll come right back. We're talking to Senator
Thanks,
Eric Nesbitt. He is, of course, a Republican candidate for governor, and he is the minority leader in the state Senate, for which we don't have representation.
You asked, and Old City Hall listened
to fund the ice storm relief for northern Michigan. Was there any progress made?
Unfortunately, there hasn't been any progress. As you know, and listeners know, is that the ice storms up in northern Michigan were very devastating. People were left without power over a month around Gaylord all the way over to the Alpena area. And President Trump, to help out, people were trying to make it up in northern Michigan, issued a disaster declaration, sending $50 million to help folks recover from it. And the House, in a bipartisan, near unanimous vote, passed $100 million appropriations to help the locals, help families up in northern Michigan recovering, to help them. And unfortunately, the Senate has not had any action on that. And so we called on the Senate Majority Leader to help the people in northern Michigan as they work to recover. as they from this devastating storm, and there's still been no movement. My hope is that when we get back next week, that we can go ahead and get some movement on that and help a lot of these folks in northern Michigan.
I mean, it seems so simple. It is a bipartisan issue. You've got bipartisan support in the House. There shouldn't be a political reason for this not to happen.
No, and unfortunately, it seems to be people are using it as leverage, and it's tough enough with the high cost of energy, high cost of insurance, high cost of gas to make it in Michigan. When you add an ice storm on top of it, that was devastating for so many families and around northern Michigan, that it's up to folks to really step up and to help these folks recover so that these families and small businesses can continue to make it in Michigan.
Yeah, we're sympathetic around here because we had the dam failures, which caused extensive flooding, and they're getting rebuilt now. So we understand what the people in northern Michigan are going through, and they deserve the same help as anybody else in this state.
Yeah, and we stepped up in a bipartisan way to help people recover, help people make it. Still not recovered yet. As you guys know better than anybody, it takes a while, but it takes the whole state, it takes the whole community coming together to help people make it here in Michigan.
All right, I want to go back to education for a minute. And the reason I do is that every budget, it seems, somehow we find a way to increase funding for education. But yet, our scores are terrible nationally. We get near the bottom of the pile. Money doesn't seem to equate to success in the classroom. What am I missing?
You're right on it. There's examples that we can see where accountability and transparency and get back to basics on making sure that our kids are able to make it here. And unfortunately, they're not able to make it here. 3 out of 4 fourth graders aren't reading at grade level. That's criminal. That is criminal. We got to get back to basics, and there's examples we can use. We got to make sure every third grader is reading at or above grade level by the end of third grade. We got to make sure that our high school students have opportunities to go to college, to go to trade schools, to get career and technical education. We got to go back to saying that every student needs to have those opportunities. That means that instead of teaching 70 pronouns in our elementary schools, that we're back to the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. Instead of DEI, let's get back to ABCs. And my goal is what we need to implement is a basic phonics and the science of reading in early elementary, making sure that every student has access to tutors and every teacher has a literacy coach. And by the end of third grade, every third grader is reading at or above that third grade level. And that's just making sure that every kid and every student is able to achieve and able to make it here in Michigan. And then every high school student. So you know who Mike Rowe is?
Yeah.
The Dirty Job?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Mike was here in Michigan a few months ago, and I was at the conference he was at, and he gave a startling statistic. And hardworking folks in the Saginaw area know this, that for every 5 people retiring from the trades, there's only 2 people replacing them.
Yeah.
And as you and I know, the trades have a lot of good family supporting jobs. If you're an electrician, a welder, auto mechanic, right? These are good, hardworking jobs. Plumber, pipe fitter, electrician.
And they pay well.
And yes, and for every 5 people retiring from the trades, there's only 2 people replacing them.
Well, part of that is for many, many, many years, all we heard was you have to go to college, you got to get a 4-year degree, you got to go to college, you got to have a 4-year degree. Not every student wants to go to college or needs to go to college. they can go to a trade school and come out making more money than somebody who went to college, probably.
So 30 years ago, my oldest brother, he was the average student in high school, right? But he could tear apart a transmission over the weekend and put it back together at 16 years old.
Yep.
And if we had the same one-size-fits-all curriculum from Lansing that's being forced down our local high school's throats, he probably would have flunked out. What's 2 years of a foreign language going to teach him? Getting a D in that just to get a high school diploma. But he had a choice. He was able to do diesel mechanics at the local ISD his junior year. He did work study at a local farm implement dealership his senior year. He had a job on day one, and 30-some years later, he's had a good family-supporting job.
Yeah.
It's creating those opportunities, and that's why we need to blow up the current curriculum in Lansing. And if we're going to allow working families to make it here in Michigan, we got to get back to the basics and saying we're going to create, by 10th grade, there needs to be basic competency levels. But whether you're going on to college, whether you're going into work and trades, we're going to lift you up, and we're going to make sure that every student, when they graduate, is going to be able to make it here in Michigan, unlike what we saw 20 years ago in the lost decade where I was waving goodbye to my generation.
Eric, let me ask you this then. Given what you just said, why do we need a federal Department of Education or a state Department of Education telling locals how to run their schools?
Well, I think what President Trump is doing in reverting power and control back to the state level provides a great opportunity here in Michigan. But we got to take that opportunity to make sure that we have the accountability, we have the transparency, we're empowering parents. Because the most local level is the parents, and empowering parents to make that choice for their kids, making sure that they have the information they need, that their kid is reading by the third grade level.
Yeah.
Because we could trace that child. If they're not reading at or above the third grade level by the end of the third grade, you could trace that kid 20 years later, and they're on welfare, they're in jail, they're not working. We got to get back to basics if we're going to allow our kids to make it here in Michigan, and that's the opportunity that we have. But it means we have to shake up the status quo, and I say we have to really change the Michigan Department of Education. That the public that we elevate the state superintendent to one at a cabinet level, and have accountability and transparency, and we push that through, that at the end of the day, parents have choice for their students, that their children are reading at or above the third grade level, and that if you're really going to make it here in Michigan, that kids have real career options in the trades and blue-collar workforce, so that as President Trump brings back these jobs to the United States, that we don't just have made in America, but we have made in Michigan.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm running for governor.
Eric, can you hang on for another segment? Or you time?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I'll take a break and we'll be...
I always have time for you, Art.
Thanks. State Senator Eric Nesbitt running for governor, and we will be back to talk more with him after these notes.
Faith and Family Home Health Services is not
Back with you on the Art Lewis Show here on WSGW. We're talking to Senate Minority Leader, State Senator Eric Nesbitt, who is a candidate for governor. Before we get too far along here, I want to ask you about that, Eric. I have to tell you a very funny line that Dan Kildee told me one time, a couple of years ago. He had told his wife just before the election of a couple of years ago that after all the votes are counted, we'll either be very happy or not. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I told her that when the votes are counted, if I win, we won't be happy. If I lose, we'll be very happy. And I went, that makes a lot of sense in politics today. So I have to ask, you've been in politics a while, and you've been the 20th District State Representative. Why now to decide to run for governor? What motivated you?
Yeah, it's something as a farm boy from West Michigan. Grew up on a dairy farm that always believed in hard work and trying to make it a little better for that next generation. But at the end of the day, it was, I'd say, five years ago during the COVID shutdowns. We had this second baby that we're in the first trimester and went to the OB's office, and it was during that second set of lockdowns. And we went to the OB's office. My wife went in. I couldn't go in. I had to stay in the car. And I get a text saying that she had a miscarriage.
Oh.
As I'm in the car. It matters who the executive is and whether they trust. It matters who the governor is and whether they trust people and families. And I can't forgive this governor for that, not being next to my wife's side and holding her hands. And unfortunately, so many people around the state have stories like that. And as we discussing about the next governor with my wife after this last election, we brought that up. And because you can't go around and spend this time around the state without your wife's support. And experiences like that I hear on the campaign trail all the time. And I was made in Michigan. I'm a farm boy. And I think if as hard it is to make it in Michigan today with the cost of energy, cost of insurance, how poor local roads are, that after extensive conversations with my family, that we said it's worth that time and effort to raise those voices around the state, that every family, every person should be able to make it in Michigan, just like I've been able to do and my family has for generations.
It's not an easy decision to make, is it, in this day and age?
No, it's one of those. It's not, because I'm somebody that is a farm boy, somebody that works hard. That it's a big state, and you got to engage, just like President Trump did last year. Engage a very different set of folks around the state, from auto workers to loggers to farmers to law enforcement officials. But what I hear day after day after day is it's just really tough to make it here in Michigan. Just really tough. The cost of insurance, the cost of electricity, cost of energy, the cost of government. How do we bring all those prices down so that people, their families, can actually make it here again? And that's really what it comes down to, is how do you make life just a little bit easier for folks? How do you make people be able to afford the bills they have? And that means you got to shake things up in Lansing. You got to take on the status quo, and you got to go ahead and trust parents over government. And you got to tell law enforcement officials, small business owners, working families, kids in schools that we have your back, that we can do it together.
All right, I'm going to get you to hang on just for one more, and then we'll let you go after that. But got to take a quick break. We're talking to Eric Nesbitt, State Senator Nesbitt, running for governor. And we will be back. Let me talk for a moment about my friends at Quick Lane in Freeland at McDonald Ford. They know it's been a bad season for allergies, and they want to help you in that regard. They have a product that they place in your air conditioning system in your automobile. It's called FrigiFresh. And to tell you all about it, here's John from Quick Lane.
FrigiFresh. Hi.
All right, we're back with you. One final segment with State Senator Eric Nesbitt, candidate for governor. Eric, one of the things, and you touched on it early, but one of the things that everyone is looking for in a new budget is local roads. And I say local roads, not state highways, federal highways. We spent a ton on them. But it's the local streets that are in such bad shape. The Republican House had a plan. What do you see happening with it? What do you think will happen with it?
You're exactly right. If families and manufacturers and small business owners are going to make it here in Michigan, if we're going to make products here in Michigan, we got to fix our local roads. I look at getting home from work and you continue to have to replace your tires, your windshields. You guys see it every day. Your listeners see it every day. And this is why we just need to get it done. $3 billion was passed in this week's House budget. It was a bipartisan budget that came out. I support the roads plan from earlier this year that just gets it done. And that's the important thing, is that we use the right material, we use Michigan workers, we use Michigan equipment to rebuild our local roads and streets. And unfortunately, this governor borrowed $3.5 billion 6 years ago to fix a lot of these I and U.S. roads. That funding comes to the end, and right now, if we do nothing, if we just keep the status quo the way it is, our local road commissions and city road departments are going to actually have less state funding next year than they did last year because of the bonding that happened. And so if our families are going to make it in Michigan again, we got to get back to basics, and we got to go ahead and say we're going to fix our local roads and get it done. And the House budget that was passed does that.
Have you had conversations with your fellow Democrats, the fellow senators who are Democrat? Excuse me.
I'm a Republican.
I know that. I just phrased it wrong. Have you had conversation with your fellow senators who are Democrats as to what they're looking for and what their obstruction is and why?
So I've told them that we just need to get it done. We have the votes on the Republican side to get it done. We have, it's so tough for working families and folks around this state as they drive over these local roads. They get home and they take their kids to soccer practice and having to go in for repair after repair that costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars that our families are paying for. Believe me, nothing is cheap. It's tough to make it here in Michigan right now. And so I've said we got the votes to get it passed, and unfortunately the Democrat majority, the majority leader, hasn't come up with a plan, hasn't come up with a solution, hasn't put up a vote on fixing our local roads, and I've called on them continuously to just get it done, call the vote. And it seems like there's a bigger concern with funding social welfare programs, funding waste, fraud, and abuse, and allowing state workers not to show up to work than actually just getting it done and fixing our roads.
You would think that fixing the roads is such a popular issue, they'd want to hop right on board. You would think.
Yeah, well, it's especially the bipartisan proposal that would get it done that's been passed, that the Democratic governor ran on.
Yep.
And it's so I think people are tired of just the political bickering and back and forth, and life's tough enough with how, the number of folks that are skipping credit card payments, that are behind on housing payments. Like, it's tough out there.
Yeah.
And people don't want this bickering. Let's just get it done. Let's just make it happen. Life's tough enough. Let's if these working families and manufacturers are going to make it in Michigan. Let's actually get it done and make it in Michigan.
All right, Eric, in the minute we have left, why do you want to be governor?
Well,
why should
so
we
that,
vote for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just